is a test. And unfortunately with my setup, there's no way, oh, hey, Sean, there's no way for me to know if this is working because I can't monitor my audio. But if you can hear me, great. And do me a favor, if you're here and you can hear me, throw a little comment that says I can hear you, or no, Sean, I cannot hear you. I would love to know, because otherwise I'm going to seem like a real dummy as I live stream silently for however long this takes. But hey, welcome. We're doing some product stuff, and this is what I've been working on for the past, I don't know, week, 2 weeks, something like that. It seems like it's been a little while, and it's one of those things where I don't feel like I have gotten exceptionally good quite yet, but I did, oh, come on. I'm trying to adjust my stand, and instead it's just a live stream of me looking like a dummy. There we go. Ha ha ha. Christopher, can you hear me? It works? Great. I'm hoping that there's audio, because if there's not audio, not going to be fun. But welcome to the studio. It has moved around a little bit since I was last live streaming. I think 2 weeks ago I was down here and I had the table set up here. And let me scoot this back just so you can see even more. So I have this table here, and this was here, and I had my product turntable setting on this beautiful table that I made and stained myself. And what I noticed was I kept seeing reflections in the cans as I was doing this stuff. Like even with as controlled of lighting as I had, when I was setting the can on the turntable on the table, I was getting all these brown reflections, these like golden reflections from the table itself. And so I started to like lay foam core over the table, and I bought a bunch more foam core and got more duvetine, and like I was doing this whole thing, and I'm like, wait, I think if I just get rid of the table, it's gonna solve all of those problems. So that's exactly what I did. And I took my trusty stool covered in stickers from Vintage Vinyl. If you're from St. Louis, it's an institution of a record store that I got to work at when I was in 7th grade. But I now just have the stool as my entire working surface, and then I have this product turntable that rotates when I have the remote. There it is. Oh, it needs to be on, doesn't it? So that just rotates, and I can pick the speed and the direction. I can slow it way down. And that has been like the entire core of these videos. And what I'm doing to try to make it better is I built this little contraption, which is a piece of wood with a 1/4-20 screw all the way through it into a, yeah, Lazy Susan, thank you. So I've got the Lazy Susan powered turntable. And then I've got this little contraption, which I just put a washer. I'm sure there's something better than building this from scratch. I just couldn't get my brain to think of what it was. And I was looking at other people's videos. I couldn't find something that I was happy with, that I understood what it was and how they were using it. But I wanted something that had a tiny flat surface onto which I can set a can and quickly swap cans in and out. I see a lot of people like empty a can and they'll like put a skewer through it that's somewhat permanent, and then for your next can you have to put a skewer through it, and I didn't want to have to empty all these cans out and do all that. So I made this little thing which I can set comfortably right in the middle there, onto which I can just set a can, and presto, we have rotating can. The motor really seems like it's working harder than any motor has worked before. But so this right here is the crux of the setup. We've got camera. Right now I've got the Sony 90 macro. shooting the can pretty close to it. I was doing some close-up of the labels last. And then we got into the next problem. Let me see. It's sort of a weird place to frame and talk and show everything. But after I got rid of all the reflections from the table by removing the table, the next thing is, I love this light. This is an amazing light, but up close and on reflective surfaces, this can cause some very distracting shadows. Because when this is on, and here, I'll turn on, actually I have to change my battery, of course, right when I need it most. But let me show you what it looks like and how I'm attempting to solve it, even though it is not the best of solutions, I admit. And this is where it really starts to become apparent that my gear, while adequate and wonderful, is not specialized for this, and there's a reason that there is specialized gear for this. And then let me take you on a quick tour, just so you can see the rest of the space. I'm going to spin the camera around, stand by. So we've got the can on the Lazy Susan turntable, Sony, Hudson Spider Mosey, and in the background I have this Elgato green screen, which I've been using mostly. It's wonderful. And then I was doing some stuff with a green can. And if you try to put a green can onto a green background, it disappears and you can't actually key it. So I was trying to put it on a black background and was having some success, but it needs improvement. And so I bit the bullet and got a blue screen, which will be arriving later this week. Yeah, exactly. I just did not have any actual good chroma key blue at my disposal for this. So that's what it's looking like. But the problem is this reflection. And so the next thing I did was grab this old friend. I have some of these. I've got two of these round ones, but even when you get close to it, you can still see a lot of the reflection, and you can see that it's a big circle. And it's just, the whole name of this game is to get the biggest light source you can imagine. And if you don't have the biggest light source in the world, then you're going to end up having lines, streaks, and distractions. And so I found that shooting my Mosey here, backing it up a little bit, and getting out this monster, which is the same thing but like 3 times bigger. Hiya! By taking this and doing one of two things. One, I can slide it in next to the can like this, and I've literally just been leaning it up against the camera or against the light stand rather than mounting it in any thoughtful way. But this goes a long way to softening up the light, but then also I've hung it. I've got a little clamp here on a baby pin that I showed last time that's stuck to the drop ceiling. Matthews makes these. I know I showed it last time, but if you're new here, these things, if you have drop ceilings, are amazing. And I forgot what they're called, but it's just a Matthews, they didn't put the name on here, but it's a scissor clip that just clips onto drop ceilings. So I have a drop ceiling down here, so it's really easy to be able to come up here, wiggle this onto there, close it, and then I've got a baby pin mounted overhead without any C-stands or anything like that. So I'm going to bring my phone around so you can see my screen here and sort of how we're going to solve these problems and the 4 main problems that I keep running into as I do all of this. So I'm going to spin the camera around. Bear with me for a second. It's going to go upside down. It's all part of the adventure. Thank you for your patience and for being willing to be upside down for a moment. There we go. Hey, I don't know how that's actually looking in the stream, but on my screen, the iPhone camera of the screen doesn't look that bad. Oh, and thank you. My son had his first day at school today, and he visited his school, and he insisted on wearing his pink Converse, so I wore my red Converse in solidarity. Okay, the other thing, I know I just made this so that you can't see anywhere. Let me pull this up just a hair. So the background here, since we're doing this other can, I'm going to get rid of the black. And I just have pony clamps and a jagged, cut up, discarded piece of duvetine that I was using for that black background. But for this, I'm going to slide this green screen back as far as I possibly can. Because I'm only keying out the can, it's not like I'm standing in front of this and I'm dwarfing the background. It just needs to be big enough to cover literally just the outline of the can, which is really convenient as far as keying this because, let me pull this down here so you can see it again. As I do this, if I center this up a so looking at it, I can just move this around until it's right where I want it. Instead, I'm not using the whole table anymore. This got much easier. But what I love about this more than any of these other simplicities and conveniences is that when I light the green screen, I can have the light in the way almost. I've got the Quasar Rainbow Q50 here set to daylight, and I'm literally just gonna pull this in and keep checking my monitor to just make sure that the light itself is not in the shot, but I can get it as close as I can. And by the way, this is my favorite little cheat here that has made this so much easier. And if you're thinking about doing product videos, I can't say I recommend this sort of expense, but I had this already. And this is the wireless receiver, the Focus 7 by Small HD. So this is the Focus 5 on camera monitor, and this is the Focus 7 handheld monitor, and they connect wirelessly to one another. Are you gonna make me? Oh, there we go. Okay, so I've got this, and the reason I love this so much is now I can take this with me up here, and what you can see back there, normally I wouldn't be able to see, but I can adjust this light and notice that, okay, that's in the shot, rather than coming back to the camera and checking it each time. So I can use this to just save myself a bunch of walking back and forth to make sure that it's lit well. And so I'm actually going to try to go vertical with it so it more matches the contour of the can evenly with the key. I'm sure there's gaffers who would look at this and have a panic attack or something, but this is what I've been messing with and where I've been happy for the past couple days. So yeah, that light is absolutely in the shot, but what matters more is that green screen is just perfect. And I'm going to end up keying out all of that anyway, so it doesn't matter that this thing is in the shot because I'm going to crop around the can anyway. What matters to me is that the light around it is just absolutely popping. Let me see if anyone has said anything meanwhile. You got to use the Quasars or the Small HDs. Either way, they're both fantastic little things. So my next struggle that I kept having is the actual spinning of the item. And so I turned on a little crosshair in the center of mine, and there is a way to do a full-on cross across the screen, not just that little target. But I need to figure that out. But right now it is off center, so I need to find it. And then the other little thing that's wrong about my setup is that the can has a tendency to lean one way or the other on this little thing. And so you saw all the hot glue on the bottom of my washer just trying to hold it steady. But this is what we're going for. This is what we're looking for. And this is where I want that logo to pop. And so I'm going to make sure my camera is well focused, but on manual focus. And the one little thing it needs is an SD card. I've been using the Sony Tough SD cards, and I could not be happier. These things are beefy and robust, and they hold a lot and they record at very high speeds. So they've been perfect for anything with slow motion. But actually, as I'm filming all of this, I'm not actually doing anything in slow motion because I'm able to spin the can so slowly that I don't have to, like, I'm not trying to slow it down in post, which lets me record at the highest resolution possible. I'm not just like recording at 120 frames per second. I can record in 24 frames a second, which means at 24 frames a second, I can open up my shutter to 1/50th of a second to have my 180 shutter rule, and I don't need a bunch of extra light. And that's the big thing, where if I were going to film this in slow motion, I mean, when I go from 24 to 60, I need 2.5 times more light, and when I go to 120, I need 5 times more light. And rather than do that, I'm just going to speed it up in post instead of slowing it down. So I'm going to turn off the overheads there. And actually I have to run to the top of my steps. And I'm just going to unscrew that. There we go. So it's a little moody now. And the only thing that's lit is the green screen. But here comes the Mosey. Go to on. So the light from this thing is now shining. Let's see if you can see this. It's coming out of this light, shining into the bounce umbrella, and then through this diffuser onto the can. And this is once again, a forgiving shot because I have it cropped in past the label, where the worst part of this, and actually you can see it here a little bit, the worst part of this is the top of the can, because this can is a paper label. So it's really, really not reflective. But the top of the can, where it's chrome, will pick up all these reflections. And so this is where I've noticed that by taking a few sheets of foam core, let's see what I've got here. I was surprised as I was messing with this at how much of a difference it made. Where did my other monitor go? There you are. Set this on the floor so I can see. But as you can see as I pull this in, watch the top of the can, you can just see it start to cloud over with the pure white. And that just comes as I put this foam core all the way over and seal off any crack. And any break between diffusion is going to make a black line from the shadow. And you can see as I pull this away a little bit, at the top of the can is what we're looking at up here. And it's just been a tough little battle to have it not look like there's a bunch of reflections. And I'm sure people wouldn't notice at first glance, but I would feel bad delivering a project to a client and being like, yeah, you can see a whole bunch of my basement in it. But so foam core has been my saving grace for that. And I'm like building foam core igloos around these products to get it to work. But what I'm looking for next is the exposure. And so I'm shooting, I love false color. If you don't use false color, I don't know how you do it. But to me, false color has made my life as a filmmaker much, much better and more reliable. But if you haven't seen this before, there's a scale on the bottom going from purple to red, which is just how bright it is. It has nothing to do with the color at all. Like imagine a black and white image. This is just the brightness of this thing. So when I flash back, you'll see it's pretty bright in the green there and pretty bright in the blue here. But even though they're wildly different colors, when we look at this, they're about the same brightness. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that the background is lit somewhat evenly. You can tell it's really not right now. And then secondly, I want to make sure that the can doesn't turn purple anywhere, because anywhere it turns purple, it's just too dark. It's going to be absolutely black in the shot, and I'm not going to be able to mess with that. So I'm, in this case, still going to close down my aperture and turn up my ISO to try to make this happen. Coming back to my false color, you can see now I've got some red on the can, which means we're clipping on the opposite side of things. So I think there's a sweet spot where, yeah, we get a little purple in the design of the can as it comes around, and there's a little red from the reflection on the top of the can, but ultimately that's a pretty fair and even lighting of it. So I think if I move the diffusion a bit closer, I'll end up with a brighter shot that's a little bit more even, but for now I'm not going to mess with that. But to bring you back to show you what it looks like that. So looking at this now, I'm going to come back and move my backlight a little bit to try to even out the lighting on the green screen without interfering too much. In this case, I'm just going to make one side dimmer because that's all I really can do, and I don't want to get out a second light just to try to light that evenly. So it looks somewhat even. We got bright green over here, and right on the edge of that, the far edge of the can over here, it's bright green there too, and that's good. That's what I want, because this other part doesn't matter as much. It's really just getting that crisp edge on the side of the can so that I can key it out and put it somewhere else. So I'm gonna roll here for a second, and I'll show you my settings one more time. Let me bring you down to the actual Sony camera so you can see what we're working with. I'm shooting an HLG3 hybrid log gamma 3, which I like to overexpose a little bit. And so that's why my meters are pretty high here, and I'm center metering. But I'm running ISO at 1000, which for the A7S III is fine. And I've got my aperture at f5.6. And I think if I wanted to dumb this down a little, or to darken it up a little bit, I would actually close the aperture a little bit, because I want the label in focus. I want it sharp, and there's no reason to have bokeh with the background because I'm going to key it all out anyway. Like, the only thing that's going to remain from this shot is the can, which I want to be in focus. So one last time, I'm going to make sure that my can is mostly upright and even, which has proven to be one of the harder parts of all this. And then I'm just going to roll and let it go around 2 times. And this is where I could probably speed it up or slow it down, find some sweet spot, but for me, that's working right there. And on my little screen here, the red in the can is showing the focus peaking, so when the logo comes around, if you can actually see any of that in the resolution, or if it looks like the words are glowing red there, that's because they're in focus, which thankfully is the goal. But we're going to let it come around one last time past the UPC there. I know with some bottles, like with beer bottles, you can peel off the back label. Like, the labels are in 2 parts a lot of times. It is 2 labels, one with the logo and everything, and then one with all the boring legal details. And that's what you don't want to necessarily show. Like this last part that's coming around here, that has the UPC and the recycle it in Minnesota nonsense. All that is not what I want to show when I make the final video. And if I could just get rid of it, that would be easy. So with some bottles that have dual labels, you can very easily, and it's a wonderful thing. So I'm going to stop rolling. Hopefully we got plenty there. And now I'm going to switch lenses. And I'm going to try something. Let's see how crafty I can be here. I'm going to bring this up, if I can. Once again, my C-stand keeps eating my camera mount. So here we go. This is what I want you to see. It's me setting that up there, but what you want to see is this guy. Can we 2 birds, 1 stone it? Oh, come on. Something's wrong with this battery. Every time I set this thing down, it shuts off. Tell me this works. I'm going to be so proud of myself. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do next, first of all, I'm going to turn on the overhead for just a minute while I do all this. And my next step, I want to switch lenses to a wider lens. So I'm going to turn off my camera for just a second, take off the macro, because I got that close up of the label, and I think I'm going to try, this is a bit aggressive, but I have a 24-70 I could use, but I'm going to put on this 20 millimeter f1.8. And I'm not going to use that much of the aperture, but hopefully the video kicks back on for you. See how we're looking here. Stand by, here comes the wireless. And presto. So here you can see again, it helps that the green screen is that far back because I'm only really doing the can. But what I'm going to do is come in crazy close to this can. I want it to be this like big old hero shot. And that looks pretty good as far as like how close I want to be to the can. I think if I get too much closer, I'm not going to be able to focus on it, which is not what I want. But the other thing here is that I don't want to have to move the backdrop a lot closer. So if we put it right about there, I'm going to then bring my green screen closer to it until it actually fills the frame. And I just set my monitor over there for you guys, so I don't know if this is enough. Let me see. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I'm gonna focus on the can there. It's on manual focus. I'm gonna move this up here a little bit. I forgot why I bought this pop-up green screen. I think I was gonna like stream at my desk or something like that, but I don't use it for that at all. But having a green screen that stands up on its own is really, really handy. So yeah, now we're looking good again. Seeing as my green screen has moved a little closer, I'm going to come in here a little bit, still surrounded by green on the can. I'm still going to be able to key all the way around it. But I get this sort of really, really, when you're shooting with a wide angle lens up close versus a zoom lens from further away, it changes how something feels. But normally you see that change in the background because you can see more of the background. What's different here is that we're going to change that focal length so we're this close, but we're still seeing more of the can than we were seeing when the camera was further back. But when we get rid of the context of the background, we still end up with this sort of rounder, beefier looking can. Because we can see the whole thing and we can see, like, we can tell we're close. And it's almost like the top of the can is far away and the bottom of the can is far away and the middle kind of gets a little bigger because of this. And I can change this slightly if I lower the camera and sort of point up a little bit at it. That's how we can get this sort of larger than life where this can feels like it's dwarfing us when we finish the edit. So that, I think, is going to work. I like that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think if I were to change one thing about my little setup here, I would actually make the stick here, the bolt that holds this in, I would make it shorter. And it's the tiniest thing, but right now if this were just a little bit lower, then it would be easier for my green screen rather than having to like bring my green screen up or closer. But the nice thing about it is it's tall enough that I can put lights underneath it. And so there's a handful of different things I can do. I can set the light on there and let it go around with it, which sort of maintains the integrity of where the light is in space. Or I can mount the light sort of statically so that even as the can goes around, the light stays where it is. And then we're going to get to my dream shot, which I've yet to fully crack the code on, but we're close. So I'm going to go turn off the overheads again so we can actually see what this looks like. Hoping that back here on the camera, I'm not actively monitoring it at this point, but hoping that this is useful and decent. And I'm gonna see if I can bring this a little taller. Does it? Oh, yeah. Oh, that makes all the difference. That's good stuff there. So, gonna come over and grab some foam core. And try to bring this in pretty tight. And I'm able to see different things on my monitor than you're seeing on yours, if you're seeing anything on yours. But I'm just looking at the false color right now, making sure I've got a whole bunch of good bounce on this one side. And I've got it right in the bright green, which is where I want it, but I'm gonna close the aperture down to save this other side of the can just a tiny little bit. I don't want anything to be too hot. So with this ready, I'm gonna roll when it passes that. There we go. We're speeding. And I'm gonna bring this in as close as I can. And I have found that if I don't hold completely still, I will see myself in the reflection on the top of the can later. And when I'm trying to edit this, I will have issues and annoyances because I'll see my hat moving around or my shirt or just the shadow of a figure somewhere behind the light, and that's not what I want. But I also realized as I'm doing this right now that I've left the little light on the turntable. And so I'm going to record a second clip where I'm holding the light steady. It's this little guy. And let me go where I can see the color. There we go. I'm just going to hold this just on this side a little bit to give it that little pop of color. And I'm using it on a light orange, like an orangish yellow, just to sort of warm it up. What I'm going for with this can, it's a Bomb Pop inspired sparkling seltzer. Oh, whoops. My mat got in the way. So it's a Bomb Pop inspired sparkling seltzer, which is cherry, lime, and blue raspberry. And so it's this firework 4th of July sort of summery feeling. And so hopefully with this little bit of yellowish orange light, I can actually sort of give that vibe of, hey, this is summery. This is that summer night bonfire, hanging out, barbecue sort of vibe. I don't want to use something colder or too bright and distracting. I want it to be somewhat natural. And so I'm going to let this come around one last time. And then we'll call it a wrap on this shot. I found that for me, my biggest weakness as a filmmaker has always been, and not just with product photography, but patience. Trying to do these things and to get shots, so often I lack the patience for it. And I choose to rush things or sacrifice things because it's not exciting. Like I want to move on to something that's better and more engaging. And so for me, having to click record and then wait for 20 minutes for it to come around isn't exciting. And I've noticed making some mistakes that way. I'm going to record this one more time as I look at it, just without that mat in here that's balancing it out. So it's more of a dynamic shot where you can see the shape of the can. And then I'm going to bring this light behind it a little bit just to light this edge. So there's recording. And of course, I forgot the remote. So I'm just going to hold this back here and let it light this edge of the can a little bit. Da, 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 da. All right, so there's our beautiful label, our beautiful UPC rather. The label's great. Yeah, these matte paper labels are really forgiving for a beginner messing with this and not having to build a infinite white studio to bounce things around in here has been encouraging, and it has made the process more enjoyable. So there we are, coming all the way around one last time. And then I'm gonna stop it. And so the last shot that I want to get to bring the story together, not bring the story together, the last shot I want to get because it's fun is I want the can to spin. So the shot I want to be the can spinning and rotating in the air, but seeming like it's natural for it to do so. And so how I want to do that is by spinning it and moving this light in a circle around the can in such a way that when I edit it later, I can rotate the can in my software to basically make it seem like the light is staying in one place and the can is rotating. So there's like an overhead light and the can is spinning underneath it and rotating underneath it. And the trick so far to that has been trying to move this light slow enough and consistently enough that I'm able to sell it. As I've messed with this a little bit, I've either gone too fast or like it's sort of, I go quick on one side and then as I'm trying to spin it, I end up sort of ahead of it and behind it as I'm trying to do a constant spin, a constant rotation of the footage in my software. But that's where we're at. Okay, we're gonna give it one more shot. And again, I thank you for your patience. And the key here for me is gonna be to not cause too many shadows. And you know what would be great? If I had like a hula hoop or something. If I had a circle, an empty circle, like a frame that I could put in, like a bicycle wheel wouldn't work because there's spokes in the middle, but like a hoop, like a ring light essentially, only I could attach this to it and then just slowly spin. This would stay attached to that and therefore it could pass under and around the camera without ever really causing a problem. That would be easy and I think I'd be able to move that smoother, but I thought about that the other day and I just don't have anything like that and I need to build something and I haven't yet. So here we go. Gonna start the spin. And just to make this easier, I'm gonna try to go as fast as this thing can. And that looks like top speed right there, which is a bit excruciating. And so I'm gonna start passing this thing around and around. And this is where having the can elevated a little bit is gonna make it easier to get underneath it more naturally, as where if I could only come down sort of to the side of it, this wouldn't really be possible. But I'll be able to come between the tripod and the Lazy Susan each time and hopefully do something a little bit more natural. I'm seeing though, as I'm looking at this, that I can definitely see the actual reflection of my light in the can as it comes around. So I don't know what I'm gonna be able to do about that in post, but we're gonna go with it. Maybe if I keep it just a little lower there. Okay, here we go. Giving it a try. Hoping that my speed is right here. Definitely seeing my own shadow. Not shadow, my own reflection in the can. Oh, that was right on the seam, which is all chrome all the way down. Why don't they use flat, non-reflective, like a matte aluminum? That would be much better for me. So my goal is to finish this at the top when it's on the other logo. There we go. And we'll stop it there. Okay. So we've got a close-up of the label, we've got a wide shot of the can, and now we've got this one that hopefully we can play with the light a little bit. And to my absolute surprise, let me pull this around. We're nearing the end. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for hanging out. This has been interesting not knowing, not watching it as I do it. Not being able to see the screen, being across the room, because I can't see how many people are here, nor can I see if comments are being made. Probably not the best situation for live streaming, but that's what we're dealing with today. Hey, at least the sound is good, right? In theory. Turn this off here. So, bring this in. So as I'm filming all of this, and some of the things that I'm trying to do with this summer themed can, have it be this like fireworks display, and all these aperture lights, and even the quasars, like any of these lights that can be omnicolor, the hive lights that I've had, all these things have effects to them. And this is like paparazzi, where this makes flashing camera stuff, I guess. Faulty bulb, TV, where I guess this makes it look like I'm watching TV or something. I'm not sure when these things are useful. And like for this little thing to do a TV effect, I don't know anyone who's going to make a film where it's like, oh, we'll use this so it looks like they're watching TV. But there's a lightning effect. There's party, pulsing, cop car, fire. But the one we're looking for is fireworks. And as I messed with this the other day, I've seen this effect in these lights for years. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing. This is the dumbest thing, especially for these small lights. You're never going to use, like, oh, I'm at a fireworks show. Here's a clip for a short film. It just seems so impractical and so foolish. And yet when I messed with this the other day, this was exactly what I needed. Because I wanted to have this can look like it's in some sort of fireworks show. And so if I bring this around, I want you to see, just to my surprise, how well this worked. But I'm going to bring it in here to the can as best as I can. Only kill the overheads. Footage is good enough. And especially as I start to key it and edit it, I just find that it falls apart. And so I keep starting over and over and over. And this is the 6th time I've come down here and done this. And the big missing piece from all these, I've been watching a ton of Daniel Schiffer. I love his stuff. And the fact that he's doing his stuff with such limited gear in a lot of situations and still producing such high-end results, and I know that I have more gear and different gear, and in some cases better gear than he's working with, I know I can make something as good or better than what he's doing. But what all these tutorials don't talk about is the importance of direction. And that's where I've noticed, not direction, the importance of a creative vision. And that's where I don't yet have the experience. And so for me to think, like, okay, I'm going to make this beer commercial. And I know I need a beginning, a middle, and an end. I need a hero shot and a couple close-ups and stuff. And that's all fine. But when I watch his videos, I can look at any one of those shots, almost any one of those shots, and say, okay, I know how to do that. I can film that. I know how to do the editing. I can technically accomplish everything identically to the way he's done it. And not just because he explains his tutorial so well, but I also know this software and I know how to use it. The difficulty is, and the biggest obstacle to doing this has been, before you even get to that editing point, before you even start to shoot, having a vision for what it's going to look like, and to close your eyes before you've looked at anything and to say, okay, I want the logo to go by, and I want like some hops to pop up in the background, and then I want to see a beer coming through the air in slow motion, and then I want to see this can spin up into the shot. That is a skill. That is an absolute skill. And with any discipline in any creative field, but with video, you'll get to a spot where you're an expert in a certain field. And like, I've shot enough interviews that I know how to light an interview, and I get there and I know where to put my lights and where to play with natural light, what to block out. I know how to do all of that because I've done it so many times. And I remember when I was first starting, the mistakes that I made getting into that. But I can look at a room and imagine, I'm like, oh, it'd be good to have somebody sitting here, because then we'll see this will appear over their shoulder. And if they like lean in because they're interested, it'll reveal this behind them. And I know how to do that. But with videography for products, I don't have the same volume of work. And so for me, like right now, I have 3 tricks. It's like, well, I'll spin the can, and then I'll rotate the can, and then I'll do a close-up of the can spinning. And there's no way to just make stuff up. I mean, some people are that creative. I'm not. I wish I was. I'm a talented person, but my talents are limited. And I don't have the ability to just look at nothing and say, oh, well, the can will come through here and shoot up the blah, and it'll explode in backgrounds. I can't see it like that. I don't see it like that. But if I can imitate other work, if I can look at 3 other commercials for beer cans and say, okay, I like the opening shot of this one, the middle shot of this one, and the closing shot of that one. I can replicate those 3 shots, and then I have my own video that's technically different. It seems like stealing, and it is, but that's what artists do and what we have to do. And if we don't, then we're never going to build those things. And if I can emulate someone else's work, by doing that, I'm going to stumble upon my own style. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find my own things that I like and don't like about the ways that I'm imitating. And through that, I'm going to develop my own style and develop this volume again of shots. And it starts with this list of looking at other stuff and making just an actual list on paper and say, I want a shot that's a push in where the can spins and stops right as the logo hits, you know, where the camera is. Like I want it to spin and stop. Or you have the sort of infinite spin and then the zoom away. All these shots, write them down. When you see something you like, write it down. So that way it seems like cheating, and there's this stigma to be like, well, I want to come in and imagine this. But until you're at that point, and you'll get there, but until you're at that point, there's a value in being able to say, okay, let me look at this big list of shots that I've seen before that I really like, and just go down the list and say, that would be cool. That would be cool. This wouldn't be cool, but it would be if this and this was true. And you'll start to find your own little things. And so I can see this is true. I can see this plan is going to work, but I know that it's going to take me a little bit of time to get there, and I'm not there yet. So that's what I'm working on. Thanks for hanging out tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to edit this stuff together and hopefully include this in a video in the next couple weeks, and it'll be something that's enjoyable and helpful. That's all I got. See you later. Bye.